Okay, welcome to the second part of the Bocchiaro, it's probably Bocchiaro course study. So, the main study procedure, participants were informed what their task was, about the potential benefits and risks of participation, about their right to withdraw at any time, no penalty, and they were also assured of the confidentiality of the information collected. So, covering some ethical bases there. Even though they obviously didn't tell them everything that was going to happen, because a lot of the study does depend on the deception that they're using. Each participant was greeted in the lab by a male Dutch experimenter who was formally dressed and had a stern demeanour. Okay, so a serious chap, a bit like Fabio Capello. The experimenter proceeded with a seemingly unjustified request for each participant to provide a few names of fellow students, and then presented the cover story. So imagine walking in somewhere and this chap saying to you, right, just pop down on that piece of paper a bunch of names of some friends, please. No, no justification as to why, but ask you to do it. Okay. Most people did do so. Okay, in fact, I think everybody did. They were then told the following cover story. Okay, now you don't need to learn this for the exam, but the fact that they were given it a cover story is important, and it gives you a context of what they were told. So here we go. So they were told the experimenter and an Italian colleague were investigating the effects of sensory deprivation on brain function. A recently conducted experiment on 6 participants in Rome who had spent some time completely isolated, unable to see or hear anything, had disastrous effects. All panicked. Their cognitive abilities were temporarily impaired. Some experienced visual and auditory hallucinations. 2 participants were asked to stop because of their strong symptoms and were not allowed to do so because invalid data may then have been collected. The majority were not allowed to do so is important. The majority said it had been a frightening experience. The experimenters wanted to replicate this study at the VU University, and using a sample of college students, as there was currently no data on young people, but some scientists thought that their brains might be more sensitive to the negative effects of the isolation. Although it was difficult to predict what would happen, the experimenter wanted to proceed with the experiment. A university research committee was evaluating whether to approve the study and collecting feedback from students who knew details about the experiment to help make their decision. Okay, so this cover story is they are essentially telling these participants, these students, the study that we want to carry out will probably give people visual and auditory hallucinations. It's probably going to be worse for the young people that we're testing it on. It is, we didn't allow people to withdraw from the research. So essentially we're saying we conducted an extremely unethical study and we want to do it again, but with younger people on a larger sample. Okay, so you can see the setup that they're going for here. They've asked them for names of friends, and then they're telling them that they want to carry out a really unethical study. Okay, so what happens next? Participants were told that the research committee forms were in the next room. Okay, remember this is the research committee that is supposedly interested in whether people believe it should be carried out and whether it should go ahead. They told the participants that they were to write a statement to convince the students they'd previously put the names forward of to participate. In other words, their friends potentially, or names of people they knew that they'd put forward earlier. They were to write a statement to persuade them to take part. Statements would be sent to them by mail. The experimenter left the room for 3 minutes just to allow them the time to reflect on the action-based decisions they were about to make. Okay, so they're going to take some actions based on the decisions they make. They've got 3 minutes to think about it. Okay, so they're there thinking, right, I've put these names forward. Am I going to put my mate Jeff forward for this particularly unethical research? Am I going to, even more than that, am I going to write Jeff a letter saying you should take part in this study? So the summary of room 1 then, they've met the experimenter, they've had a look at a consent statement, They've given names of some friends, they've heard the cover story, and then they've been left to think. Okay. Room 2. So when they're actually going to make the decision, they're taken to a second room where there was a computer for them to write their statement, a mailbox, and the research committee forms. Okay. Participants were told to be enthusiastic. So on the computer, they're going to be asked to write their statement to their friends. And they should use at least two adjectives amongst exciting, incredible, great, and superb. Okay, negative effects of sensory deprivation were not to be mentioned. All right, so you're saying tell your mate Jeff to get involved with this potentially disturbing study and be really enthusiastic about it, and don't mention any of the negative effects. Okay, so the question is, are they going to hang out their friends to dry or not? The experimenter told the participants to begin and left the room for 7 minutes. So they had 7 minutes to conduct this task. The researcher is not in the room. If a participant believed the proposed research on sensory deprivation violated ethical norms, he or she could anonymously challenge it by putting a form in the mailbox. Okay, so there's a mailbox in there. They didn't have to put the name. They could just say to the research committee, look, you shouldn't let this research go ahead because it's unethical. After the 7-minute interval, the experimenter returned and invited the participant to follow him back to the first room, where he or she administered 2 personality inventories, probed them for suspicion, so, said, after they'd done these self-reports on their personality characteristics, they said to them, did you know really what was going on? Could you guess this was about obedience? Have you studied Milgram before? Etc., etc. So, fully debriefed them, asked them to sign a second consent form. This time it was fully informed, so they could still withdraw their data at that point. The entire session lasted about 40 minutes. Here's an example of the research committee form. So when they're in that room deciding whether to write on the computer their statement, there's also that form on the side, and it says researchers should strive to minimize risk to participants. In more detail, they should be protected from psychological harm, anxiety, stress, clearly things that have been mentioned of that previous research. And researchers should inform participants if they see signs of psychological problems. If you think that the research on sensory deprivation violates the above mentioned basic ethical norms, please report them to the Human Ethics Committee form by checking the box below. So all these people had to do was say, yes, it clearly the research clearly violates the norms. Okay, and that's all they had to do. So it's quite surprising when we see the results how few people did do that. Room 2 summary then, they have to write a statement for their friends, so that would make them obedient, they've gone and done what the researcher asked, or they don't, that would make them disobedient. Okay, and they could also post an objection to the ethics board. Okay, they didn't have to do that, they could do that as well as not writing the statement or as well as writing the statement. It might be that one person did write a statement but didn't put that forward. It might be that someone didn't write a statement and didn't put that forward. It could be that someone didn't write the statement and did put that forward. So there's a number of combinations that could come out, but essentially you've got people who are obedient for writing the statement or disobedient for not writing the statement, and then whether they're a whistleblower or not. So the measures: if participants wrote a statement in support of the study, they were obedient. If they didn't, disobedient. So it's a summary of what I've just said. And if they wrote a statement and posted it into the ethics box, they were anonymous whistleblowers. Okay. So in other words, if they still wrote that statement on the computer, then they were anonymous because they've still done what they were asked, but they're still putting that thing forward. It's like saying, I'm still going to obey the boss, but I'm going to whistleblow on the boss as well, but I'm not going to make it clear that it's me, because the researcher will know I didn't write that statement. If they didn't write a statement and posted, they were open whistleblowers. So if they clearly made a statement, if they clearly didn't make a statement, then they were saying to the researchers, I'm not writing a statement, and pretty much making it obvious that they might have also posted the Research Ethics Committee objection. So remember, just because you disobey not writing a statement on the PC didn't mean you were a whistleblower. Okay, you could have not posted something in there and also not written a statement. A number of combinations. Right, pause me folks and summarize the procedure, and then we'll look at the findings separately. Okay, recommend doing some pictures and things as well. All right. Okay, we'll deal with the results in the third video, so we'll go to part 3 now.